Hello, my name's Julie Teal, and welcome to this week's edition of the Leadership and Retention Lab. I'm so glad you're here today. Today actually happens to be my birthday, so I can't think of a better way to celebrate than talking about the topic of career development, which is what we're here to discuss today. So, if you looked at the title of this session, it's called From Here to There, Showing Employees a Future They Can See. And like I mentioned, all about career development. That's what we're going to be discussing today. So, welcome. If you're here, I would love to have you shout out and say hello so I know who's here and where you're coming from. So, please feel free to do that. Don't be shy. And to get started, the way that I look at retention and the way I've built my business, excuse me, which is Teal Talent Strategy. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. This is around this idea of what I call the growth model. So when I put my business together, I really sat down and thought about the combination of what I've seen work in practice and the research. And what I came up with, and I introduce this at the beginning of every time that we're together on this live show, is this model here, the growth model. So we are slowly working our way through the model. And today, I won't read them all to you because you can see that. But today, what we're going to be talking about is the T right here, the trajectory, career paths that people can see and believe in. That's so important as a critical part of development. And I'll tell you, as I have been talking to leaders in professional services in particular, the two areas we keep coming back to are this one, G, great beginnings, making sure you're hiring the right people and setting them up for success, and trajectory, which is what we're about to talk about today. So, I've sat down, there's a lot I can talk about on this topic, but here are the three topics we're going to be discussing today in some length. So, the first one is making career conversations routine, not rare. So we're going to get into that and talk a little bit about not only how often to have those conversations, but what to talk about and how to set those up for success. So that's the first topic. The second topic we're going to be talking about today is creating growth, career growth through stretch assignments and new skills. So lots of times when people think about career development, they think about promotion. So certainly promotions are an important part of the process, but let's talk about something that's a little easier for you to implement as a leader. Which is stretch assignments. So we'll get into that. And then the third topic we're going to discuss today is aligning development and the combination. So what happens with career development has to align not only with what the employee wants, but what the business need is as well. And we'll talk a little bit about that because I think sometimes that gets a little lost in the conversation. I just want to bring that up. And I think we'll have a good conversation about that today. All right. So with that, I'm going to jump into the first topic, which is career conversations. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this. I'm going to pull up my chat. Hello, Michelle Moore from Indianapolis. Good to see you online today. Thanks for joining. So thanks for being here. And again, anyone else that's listening, you're certainly welcome to pop in, say hello. I'd love to hear from you. So, and while I'm talking about the topic of career conversations, here's my question to you to consider writing in the chat as well. How often are you discussing your career either with your boss or if you're a leader with your team? How often do you do that? So that's my question. So that's kind of my polling question as we jump into this today. So let's talk a little bit about career conversations. So earlier, earlier in this series, we talked about the importance of relationships, which, if you remember, was the R in that growth model. So, and as part of building relationships, you really need to meet with your team regularly. You cannot build a relationship with someone you never talk to. So having regular one-on-ones is very, very important. And at the time, if you go back to that recording, I talked a little bit about how to structure an effective one-on-one. But where does career come in? So certainly career can be part of the conversation at any time. So you certainly can talk about it anytime. But here's what I find is that it's really hard when you're talking about the day-to-day, resolving issues, conflicts on the team, concerns, meeting client needs. It is really hard to suddenly switch gears and flip over to talking about career. So my advice is to set up a special career discussion that's longer. I think a typical one-on-one is like 30 minutes. These career discussions should be more like an hour. And to do that twice a year. And be realistic, set this up when it really works for your business peaks and valleys, and what really works for you and your team. And again, it's important to get them on the calendar and then make them uncancelable. So either you move it, you don't cancel it. So let's talk about what to talk about in these career discussions. First of all, a lot of employees have never been asked what they want to do with their career. So it can be very awkward and not very productive to put someone on the spot in a conversation just without any preparation to talk about, hey, what do you want to do with your career? So here's my advice. So before this meeting, so in a good 3 weeks before the meeting, so don't have this be like the day before, have it be 3 weeks, 4 weeks beforehand. Have them really think about what are their professional goals, not only in the short term, but in the long term. And then have them also think about what are they good at? So what are their strengths? I like asking also, what do you enjoy doing? Because that usually is a clue to things that people are good at and where it would be a great place for them to build their career. And then to ask them just realistically, where do they think they need to develop? What is standing in the way of them getting to those goals? Like what either experience or skills or, what do they need in order to get to that next level? So, and you can be as formal or as informal about this as you want, but you do need some sort of feedback from the employee to come to you prior to your meeting. So you have a chance to reflect and think about it as well, because many times, if you don't have the conversation, sometimes what an employee wants to do can be a little bit of a surprise. And so I think as a leader, you don't want to be surprised in the meeting if you can avoid it. Sometimes that happens, but have them send you kind of just a short summary of that before your meeting, so you have time to think about it as well. And then in the course of the conversation, you're in a position to give feedback. Okay, so you really want to get to be a project manager. Let's talk about what about being a project manager, really excites you? What makes you nervous? What skills are you developing today that you think help set you up for that job in the future? What's missing? What sort of experience do you need to get to the next level? And really get into talking it through at a deep level. And the thing that I want you to remember is the reason why it's important to have career discussions, I think roughly every 6 months, is because people's lives do change and their priorities do change. And I'm a big advocate of not only looking at development through the lens of you as a professional, but there is a personal aspect as well. And if you've been building a relationship with your employee along the way through those regular one-on-ones, you are going to be in a position to have a really open and honest conversation about what's next. Lots of times, again, if you have a really strong technical person, lots of times they may think that the only career option available to them is to be promoted to the next level. And that may or may not be where their skills are and really what brings them energy. There are plenty of technical people that are so good at being technical. And sometimes they just need the permission to be told, it's okay to stay technical. Let's make you a mentor. Let's get you on some companies have like technical experts and fellow programs. Let's get you training other people. There are so many ways for someone to be true to themselves as they build a career, because we've all seen where people make those moves into higher level jobs and they're doing it for the money, or they're doing it because they think that's their only choice, or they think they should. And I think these career discussions, and you may not get here this first time, but these career discussions are actually really essential for helping people be, again, for you to share your perspective and to have a dialogue about what the person wants, what that really means, and putting together a plan for the future. So the other thing that I'll also mention is that, again, things do change in your life at different points. And I know at different points, at one point, when I was going through a divorce, it was really hard for me to take on a lot more at that time. And I had to be realistic. Part of my professional goals were to be home at a certain time because my daughter needed me at home. And so sometimes it's as simple as that. And I think that having a good conversation, a regular conversation about career as you go is going to set you up for better and better relationships and for keeping that employee and improving retention in the long run. So I encourage you to set those up. Always have a written plan coming out of those meetings, and then bring it up again when you meet again in 6 months. And it puts you in the position as you go periodically to say, hey, you handled that issue with that client really well. I know you've been working on your assertiveness. Great job. It was you're developing. And so calling out what you're trying to develop with someone, putting it on paper, having that ongoing dialogue puts you in a position to kind of keep the cycle going for conversations and showing that person that they are developing in the job that they're in right now and that they've got a trajectory to something different. So that's about career conversations. So certainly a lot more I could say, but I'm going to move on to the next topic, which is about providing growth and development through stretch assignments and new skills. So while I'm talking about this one, please put in the chat if you've had this experience. But my question is, what was a special assignment or a stretch assignment that you were given that helped you build your career? So that's my question to you. And as we get into this topic, what I think is important to remember again is that moving up is not the only way. And I think I'm a real fan of Beverly Kay as a writer. And I think years ago, that is one of her book titles is Up is Not the Only Way. And I find one of the best ways for developing employees to the next level of their career or to the next thing is to give them a different assignment, a stretch assignment. And that can look like a lot of things. So it can be as simple as an assignment to go interview people in the jobs they're interested in to get more information about the job so they can consider it further. And especially if someone's like, I've had people that have worked for me in HR that wanted to go into sales. Go talk to the salespeople, talk to them, understand what the job is. I think another way you can do a stretch assignment is to have a shadows, to actually, spend a day with someone in sales, sit in on some calls, kind of be that silent person in the background that is listening to what's going on. Those are great ways to give people additional exposure to jobs that are not something that they necessarily do every day. So that is a great way to approach it. The other thing is special projects. I think about times where we've done technology implementations, times where we're scaling up the business and say, all hands on deck, everyone needs to go help this project get off the ground. And picking your best people or picking the people that you're looking to develop can be a great way to give them new skills, and be intentional when you tell them that. I am putting you on this implementation project because I want you to get exposure to other departments. I want you to demonstrate your knowledge and expertise with other people. I want you to revise the process and facilitate that within our team and show your leadership as a path to future leadership. So don't just give the assignment, give the context with the assignment too of what you're looking for and what you think is going to be so beneficial to that employee about that experience. The other thing that I'll say with special assignments and skill development is in that conversation that you're having on career, you're identifying that individual's strengths. And I haven't talked much about strengths so far in this session, but I am a big believer that the best way to build your career is to understand what you're good at, what you enjoy, and then go all in. Because, like, for example, like I'm good at training. I'm really good at leadership development. I'm good at standing up from a group, presenting new ideas, getting conversation going and moving people either in their attitudes or their knowledge from this point to that point. That is a strength of mine. I'm a good communicator that way. So I'm good at explaining things. So when I was building my career, one of the things that we identified is, okay, you're really good at this. Let's have you take this and get more experience by speaking outside the company. So that was one of the stretch assignments I had. So taking something that I'm good at and becoming great, becoming exceptional at doing that. And I'll tell you, that was just a fantastic experience because it had me speaking on a regular basis, which has led me into, it's really helped me in this move I've made to build this business because I'm doing a lot of leadership speaking. So it's a skill that I have that I'm very comfortable and confident doing. So that's the type of thing. And then as part of that, I even have done additional certifications to go deeper in some areas of leadership development. Like I have a certification in emotional intelligence, I have a certification in resilience. Those become really interesting topics to bring into leadership development conversations. So I mentioned that as my personal example, but that is the type of thing. Find what someone's good at, find a way to go all in, because I'm never going to be like really good at negotiation. Negotiation is not my strength. So, me going to negotiation training after negotiation training after negotiation training is going to take me maybe from uncomfortable to slightly comfortable. But that's not what I'm going to build my career on. What I'm going to build my career on is what I'm really good at and becoming great. And so I encourage you to look at your employees through that lens, and that will help you identify if there are skills, exposure, assignments, mentoring relationships that you think your employee would benefit from. So, as you walk away from this, that's what I would encourage you to consider. And one of the things I didn't say, I was kind of going down this, but I'm going to come back to it. So we talked about the fact that up is not the only way. So promotions are not the only way. Think about careers as a jungle gym, not a ladder. I think we've been sold that career is supposed to be like a step up, a step up, a step up. I have yet to meet a leader in any sort of executive role who cleanly went that path. It just doesn't happen. And I feel like the HR world and the development world has kind of been sold like create a career path, create a ladder. Well, I find that a little bit of a waste of time. Show people a lot of options, show them what's possible. And most careers look like a jungle gym. I had several lateral moves into other areas, into other industries before I got my promotion to be a vice president. Like same thing. I had multiple manager jobs in different areas and different experiences before I became a director. So it's not like everything has been cleanly like step, step, step. If that's happened to you, that's great. I just haven't really heard of it or seen it. Talking to people about the reality of their careers will show you that. So it's a jungle gym. Give people plenty of skills and experience, help them move laterally and across and gain all the skills they need. Eventually, if that's what people want, they'll be in a position to move up. But but they need the skills and foundation to do that. So think about stretch assignments as a way to get there. All right, so we've covered 2 topics. We're on to our last topic. That is about aligning the development that an employee wants with what the company needs. And this was always part of the conversation as I worked with individuals and teams. So you really want to honor and identify what an employee wants. If they want, like I'm in, I'll look at it through the lens of an HR person. So an HR generalist wants to become an HR manager. So that is an objective. And again, you can work with the employee to come up with a development plan to get there. But the thing that as an organization you need to look at is how many HR managers are in your organization, and how realistic is it for that person to get to that next level. And the truth is, especially in small to medium-sized businesses, there may be only one person that has that job or title until the company grows more. So growth is essential when you're talking about helping people build their careers, because the more the company grows, the more potential for advancement exists. So growth is one of the biggest keys in order to provide people with meaningful career steps. At the same time, you have to be realistic. So what I advocate for is having your entire manager team have these conversations roughly around the same time. So have your career conversations all, let's say, in the month of February, just to pick one out of the sky. So have the conversation in February. And then in March, have your teams get together and compare notes about what different people on the team want. If you really want to do this at a kind of a premium level, you create employee profiles where you have some information on each person, what their strengths are, what their development, what their experience is. and their career objectives. And then as a leadership team, you can talk about those individuals and get lined up and provide more feedback to the manager on does everyone in the room agree that that person has the potential to get to that job? And if that job doesn't exist, coming together with a management team to talk about, we think this person is amazing. Can we do as an organization to retain them and to have them continue to advance or move forward and keep them while the company is growing, while that position becomes available eventually? So those conversations, and again, I love facilitating those conversations. I think that talent, it's called a talent review. A talent review like that is one of the most fun things in HR that I enjoy doing. So really getting deep on trajectory, career pathing, and the individuals in your team and where they fit and what's next for them. Having that conversation is really enlightening for the management team. And then what's beautiful about it is everybody knows that your HR generalist wants to be a manager. So they're finding ways. You will have leaders come to you with opportunities for assignments or experience that allows that person to get closer and closer to their objective as an organization. So because it's great, but you have 10 people that want to be managers and you have 2 spots, you're really going to have to think creatively about how you're going to get people into those roles. And you're going to have to be realistic about the fact that if it's really important for someone to advance, there's a high risk they're going to leave the company. And I've even been on the receiving end of that. So I have an example where a really strong performer on my team wanted to move from a specialty area of HR into a generalist area of HR. In our career discussions, I was honest. It was like, I am not sure that type of opportunity that you're looking for is going to become available. And eventually when she did start to look externally, but it was one of those things that it wasn't a surprise to me when we had the conversation. And she even had the conversation with me ahead of time before putting in her notice to say, I've got this opportunity. I love what I'm doing here, but I'm working for you, but I feel like this is the right opportunity for what I want out of my career. And I'll tell you, I had to say, in the spirit of building strong relationships, I had to agree with her. Yes, you really should make that move in order to build your career. And what that does, if you can have that type of conversation, which doesn't happen all the time. That was was honored that she trusted me enough to have that conversation. But if you can have that conversation, it builds trust, it builds integrity. And that is a person I've had a long-term relationship with and hired at other companies because I knew how talented she was and what she could offer, and that the company I was working at next did have those opportunities. So with that in mind, I just encourage you to compare notes and to make sure that you understand as a leader what opportunities really are available for your people. And again, like comparing what the employee wants and the company wants is really critical when you're putting retention practices and programs and a culture of retention in place. So things to think about. So let's recap then. Let's talk a little bit about the 3 things we've covered in this live. I really appreciate all of you joining me today. The first thing is we talked about having career conversations, about having those twice a year, and to make those a combination of your employee giving you feedback about what they want to achieve in their career, what their view is on what they're good at, what they need to develop, and then having that collaborative discussion with feedback to help that results in some type of development plan or document that you can check on a couple times a year in future conversations and update. The second thing we talked about is stretch assignments. And I put a lot of ideas out there in this conversation about how you can creatively think through giving employees new experiences that aren't just sending them to training. Again, I love sending people to training. It's a great thing to do, but real growth comes from the application of skills, not from just the training session itself. So finding really intentional career assignments and stretch assignments, those make a meaningful difference when you're building careers. And then finally, the third thing that we discussed today was aligning business need with what the employee needs. And I think the best way to do that is through some type of facilitated discussion amongst your managers, where you're discussing each employee on the team, what their objectives are, and talking about those development plans and lining up. And then you can look overall at whether you have the opportunities available in the long run for people or not, which helps you not only plan for maybe some creative development assignments, but as you grow too, it allows you to say, hey, we're growing. I think we now have an opportunity for that person to move into that job, which is the strategic side of retention. So we've talked about that as well. So thank you for joining me. I am always available to discuss this topic or any of the topics that we've discussed previously to do with retention. I think retention is a very personal topic for most leaders. You've developed a company that you love and a culture you love, and it's really difficult if you start to lose people that have helped make that company special and helped you build it as you grow. So please reach out to me. I'd love to chat with you. It's an easy 30-minute consultation, and if you look at my LinkedIn profile, Julie Teal, you'll see a link to schedule time to meet with me. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you. Actually, we're not going to do this in 2 weeks. We're going to skip a session because I will be speaking at the Women Who Count conference in Phoenix. And I'll be at that conference during our normal time that we have a LinkedIn Live. But we'll pick up the next LinkedIn Live in November. So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate all the feedback and having you here today, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.